Hi everyone, hope you're well. It's been a long time since we've done an Astrocast together and I hope life's treating you good. I wanted to have a chat with everybody today because I've been asked a lot about what are my thoughts on the Saturn-Uranus square that is happening all over again. And I wanted to kind of take you back to when we first started these Astrocasts. So when Diana and I started the Astro World, which morphed into ASTRO.co.uk, the idea was to walk everybody through the COVID period and the period afterwards, because it was such a tough time that we really wanted to bring some light into the struggles that were happening at that time. Recently, I've been asked my feelings on what's happening at the moment, which is beginning to replicate what happened at the beginning of 2021. So when we first started talking on the Astrocast, it was when Pluto, Jupiter and Saturn were all conjunct in Capricorn. And that was the first time that that kind of stellium had appeared for many thousands of years. And it had a profound effect on the world. Saturn being part of our structures, Pluto being death and regeneration, and Jupiter being expansion, the whole thing together started to reshape the world in a very different way. As the planets moved away from this, Saturn then went into Aquarius and briefly conjunct Jupiter. And at that time, medical advancements were happening, which were helping alleviate the problem of COVID as vaccines were coming to the forefront. New medical techniques were taking place in order to thwart the COVID. So it was quite a positive time. At the same time, Uranus and Saturn started to square each other. Uranus being a planet of disruption, enlightenment, sudden movement, sudden outbursts, unpredictability, started squaring Saturn, which is our structures, which is our foundations for not only ourselves, but for civilization as well. And through that, many things happened which replicated that energy. For example, at the beginning of 2021, when Saturn started to square Uranus, you had the Congress riot. That in itself was a replication of Uranus, unpredictability, something coming out of nowhere, squaring Saturn, Saturn the foundations, in this case the United States. Might point out it was the Pluto return of the United States, so quite a significant time. And as a result of that, it's created a lot of divisiveness within the United States. So that is the kind of energy that Saturn squaring Uranus can have when an unpredictable act happens to affect our foundations. Now, as time has gone on, over the last year, there's been other things that have been happening which have also started to challenge our structures in a way that we haven't been challenged for many, many years. We're starting to go back into this, the planets are starting to retrograde back into that dynamic again, where Uranus and Saturn are going to square each other. And as a result, certain things have been happening on the world stage which I'd like to draw your attention to. Although they're very important and very serious, it doesn't mean it's the end of days, because I keep getting asked all the time, is this really serious? Are we heading to Armageddon and such questions? Well, the answer is no, but what we are going through is a very tough time. Now, if you look at what's happened over the last year, and you look what happened at the beginning of 2021 with what happened in America, with President Trump, with President Biden, and all the energies that have taken place since then, February 2022, Russia decides to declare war on the Ukraine. Now, as a result of that action, that has had serious implications on the structures of our planet through an act of war, which is affecting just about everything. So, for example, the Russians have cut off a lot of the energy routes to Europe. Prices have gone through the roof. It's beginning to affect the structures of our planet because people, like people in the UK, for example, who are not on very high salaries, are having to make the choice of eating or heating up their homes. This is how serious the knock-on repercussions are of an action like that. And it's quite interesting that if you looked at the chart for when that took place in the 24th of February, so here is the chart of the Ukrainian conflict. Now, this was the day that the actual shots took place, not exactly at the time, but it gives you an idea of where all the planets were. So there's a massive stellium. And when you look at that in itself, it's not really anything that you would think would be very serious. So it made me want to think what it was that set this all off. As an example, now you've got Saturn, 18 degrees Aquarius. You've got Uranus, 11 degrees Taurus. They're squaring each other again, but it's a light square because there's a 7-degree difference between 18 degrees and 11 degrees, and that 7-degree difference, it's a very light square. However, Mercury, planet of communication, coming into the orbit of Saturn, so that's Sirius energy being Saturn, starts squaring Uranus. So it made me think, I wonder what Vladimir Putin has got in his chart to affect this particular chart. So here is the chart of Vladimir Putin and the Iranian conflict. So as you can see that Vladimir Putin has a stellium in Libra. And it, at that time, was squared by Pluto, Mars, and Venus. So that in itself was challenging. But also, you've got Uranus at 11 degrees Taurus. You've got Saturn at 18 degrees. No, actually, it was 13 degrees Taurus. And you've got his Venus at 11 degrees Taurus. So Uranus was exactly opposite his Venus, making a T-square with Saturn. So you put that all together, that shows you how that particular energy sparked off that Iranian conflict, sparked off the knock-on effects of the Saturn square Uranus transit, which is affecting us all. So this is the chart of where we are today. So you can see, just like at the beginning of 2021, when Saturn and Uranus were squaring each other with a 3-degree difference, today we've got Uranus at 18 degrees Taurus, squaring Saturn at 21 degrees Aquarius, making a T-square today with the sun. So this is quite a profound day. What's interesting, the last week, Mars, which is in Taurus, was on top of Uranus. Now, having Mars, planet of energy, planet of war, on top of Uranus. So when you get that conjunction, unpredictable energy, outbursts, what's happened in the last week, which is representative of that? Well, very interestingly, it's been quite a lot in the last week, which has represented this Uranus square Mars, Uranus conjunct Mars square Saturn transit. In the Ukraine, here's an example of affecting structures. The Russians, whether deliberately or not, shelled a nuclear reactor. Why are they shelling nuclear reactors? If something happens to that nuclear reactor, not only does it affect Europe, it affects Russia if the wind's blowing in the wrong direction. Look at that for an outburst which can affect the structures of our planet when something like that happens. In the same week, Salman Rushdie gets attacked for writing a book. In the same week, people get shot in Jerusalem. American tourists are shot in Jerusalem. These are all actions of Mars conjunct Uranus, squaring Saturn, challenging people's structures as they see them in today's world. So it's a very, very important time. When you look at the squares and the oppositions at the moment, they are quite tough. So all the stuff in red is challenging. But you also need to look at what's happening positively, because wherever you have negativity, you've got positivity. And in this particular chart, at this moment in time, Uranus and Mars are being trined by Pluto. So in a way, all the hard transits to Uranus and Mars are being protected by the trine of Pluto. So the trine of Pluto, 26 degrees in Earth, is trining Mars, which creates very, very good energy. At the same time, you've got Neptune, planet of ideals, planet of dreams, sextiling Mars, sextiling Uranus, sextiling Pluto. So in the background, there's some really good transits going on, really powerful. And whenever you get involved in a meditation or a prayer for the world, it will have its highest effect when the moon or the sun is in a water sign at this moment in time, because what it will do, it will trine Neptune. So, and when suns trine Neptune or moons trine Neptune, it's a real time of getting your emotions and who you are in tune with your dreams. And therefore, it's all about putting out positive frequency, that when you do meditate and you do say your prayers, that you're praying for the world, but you do it knowing that there's some really good stuff going on in the background. I want you to focus on all the yellow and blue lines in this chart, because it's really important. Because although there's this T-square there of the Mars, Uranus, Saturn, and the Sun, there's some wonderful aspects going on. There's the aspect of Jupiter trining Jupiter here at 8 degrees Aries, trining Venus at 3 degrees Aries. A few days' time, Venus will be at 8 degrees Aries, it'll be an exact trine. That will free up a lot of loving energy for the fire signs. So for those who make meditations and affirmations and prayers for the world, if you're a fire sign, in the next few days would be a really good time to meditate, because you will find it a very nice time, a very enlightening time. Also, at the same time, you've got all this activity in Taurus, which is quite volatile. Uranus, Mars, volatility. What's happening? Mercury, planet of communication, is trining Uranus. It's trining Mars. It's trining it lightly, but in the next few days, Mercury's going to move on and it's going to create a grand trine between all these planets. So again, it's not all bad energy that's going on. The underlying background of the world today is quite challenging. I think it's important to realize there's some really good transits going on. Transits which people can feed into and collectively raise the world's consciousness and hopefully negate some of the negative knock-on effects of the Saturn/Uranus square. A few weeks ago, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who asked me to look at what was happening in November when at the winter solstice. When I looked at it, I realized that everything is coming to a climax, but actually the climax isn't in November, the climax is now. We're reaching a point, and on many levels, not just what's happening in Russia. Look at climate change. That's also affecting our structures. Look how that's happening. Unpredictable things happening. So that's Uranus, unpredictability. Mars, on top of Uranus, all these bursts of energy, squaring Saturn, which is our structure. So what's the knock-on effect of that? The United Kingdom, for example, having the highest recorded temperature ever of 40 degrees. 40 degrees? That's the kind of temperature you have in Los Angeles, not in London. You know, climate change is making an appearance, and it's making itself felt all over the world. And it's another thing we need to be very conscious of. So what's the knock-on effect of that? So with all the stuff that's going on energy-wise, and the cost of energy going through the roof because of what's happening in Russia, we've got climate change to contend with. And what's the knock-on effects of climate change? How does that affect our structures? Well, if the water runs out, that would affect our structures quite strongly. So in the UK, we're going to have to be conserving more water going forward, because we're now being faced with situations we've never had to be faced with before. And again, this is all part of the Saturn square Uranus square. So we are being challenged on very many different levels. Will it be okay? Yes, it will be okay in the end. We've been through far worse in this world. When you consider 80 years ago, we went through a Second World War, we all came out of it, and the world breathed. Well, we've had a bit of a retrograde back to that kind of behavior, but probably for the last time. This will probably be the last time we ever experience anything as big as this, because I think once this resolves itself, we're going to go on to a much better world than we are experiencing now. But we're going to have to go through a bit of discomfort to get to something really wonderful. So I just wanted to share that with you. I hope it's been useful. It's nice to catch up with you again. You guys take care.